Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Groundhog saw its shadow yesterday, so that means 6 more weeks of having to hear how great Tom Brady was. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Well, they don't call him Fuxatani Pill for nothing, right? He's got himself 6 more weeks of winter. Chad, I just told you off air this morning, brother, it's minus 24 degrees.
That's ridiculous.
Right now in Wisconsin. That's the real feel. I'm checking my temperature. It's minus 10 if you want to say what the actual temperature is,
right.
But the real feel, minus 24. This is just awful, patently awful. It's sunny outside, which is great, but it's almost like the sun gives no warmth at all. You're living in a land of ice and snow. Be careful out there, guys and gals. If you're driving around, I see Eric from La Crescent this morning. If you're driving around the area, black ice is a real problem today. I'm sure you already know that. But we haven't had snow for the last couple of days, Chad. And when you go through those periods where you have snow, they do the plowing. I don't know exactly how they do it where you're at in Washington, but snow plows don't take everything off the road in many cases. And what gets left over when it's minus 24 is dangerous. So be careful. Be careful.
Why do you have to say that the ice is black? It's not cool, man. Why do you have to point that out?
You're right. It could be white ice that's giving people
How about we just call it ice?
It's ice on ice crime. Listen. I just wanted to throw that out there because I was walking outside with my dog today and I had to hold both rails of my patio.
Oh, so you're saying the black guy snuck up on you? Huh. Typical.
Well, that would be typical, wouldn't it? What am I saying? They're wearing sneakers? Black ice is wearing sneakers? No, of course not. By the way, sneakers, very derogatory term, by the way. They're supposed to be called tennis shoes, which I'm curious to see what you think about this. So in the NBA's winning time game, which we've wrapped into a whole discussion about
great show.
Things being rigged. Great show. And I can't wait for season 2. Do you think that if the NBA players wouldn't have been so quick to jump onto tennis shoes, they might not have been called sneakers? Do you think they might have been called just hooper shoes or what? I feel like there's some sort of impetus involved in sneakers.
You know, the most important or the most amazing thing in that TV show that came up that I didn't know about, and I believe it is true, was the whole Phil Knight story that was looped into that, and how Magic was like, no, I'm going to go with Converse. And if he would have taken that deal, I think he would have made like $500 million or some ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, based upon what we know now of Nike.
Right. Obviously, you didn't know that then, obviously.
No. Phil Knight, Nike owner and president, founder, the guy that really started it, wanted to hire Magic Johnson to be their first spokesperson. He, as you said, went, no, I'm going to go Converse. Michael Jeffrey Jordan, who just a couple of years later became an NBA player, did say yes. But have you, in the documentary, The Last Dance, you see what it took for Michael's agent to really get that deal done. Nike was a nothing burger. They were an absolute nothing burger.
Kind of a joke at the time.
A way big joke. Dude, it was Michael Jordan's dad and mom, along with this agent, said, listen here, son, and this is what I love about it, because this is the 1980s, and Michael's still a child in many ways that looks up to his parents. His folks are in this meeting, which would never happen now, except if you're, I don't know, Lamar Jackson, right? Your mom's not in the meeting unless you're Lamar Jackson. Right. His parents said, Michael, you're going to take this nice man Phil's money, and you're going to make this a brand. Best thing that ever happened. The Air Jordan sneaker they thought was going to sell, I don't know, a couple of thousand pair. Yeah. Ended up becoming the best-selling sneaker all time. Matter of fact, more people got killed over the Air Jordan sneaker than they thought was actually going to sell the Air Jordan sneaker.
I would say, outside of the Chuck Taylors, probably the most popular basketball shoe of all time was that 1985, that black and red and white Air Jordans. Those were the shoe for the longest time, and those were the ones that you're referring to, where people were literally getting murdered over their shoes, which is really hard to fathom, but that was actually happening.
Well, unless they're wooden shoes and you're in the Netherlands, which I can understand you wanting to kill somebody for because it's wet and you want to float a bit, okay? So I understand. But unless they're those shoes, no, it's really hard to imagine people getting killed for their kicks. But those Air Jordans were impactful. I think Magic, though, when we circle back around to Magic, he did okay for himself. He might have missed out on that opportunity.
Yeah.
But everything else, he thought, no, I've learned my lesson. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, or wait, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. He figured it out. Starbucks, movie theaters, Magic Johnson, Empire.
Well, speaking of celebrities, there's another that brings it to mind another story. You remember the movie Animal House? Animal House at
Yes,
the
I
time
do.
was a low budget film, and the biggest star in the movie, other than John Belushi, was Donald Sutherland. Donald Sutherland had a chance to take a percentage of the movie, and he passed. He said, "No, I don't want to take a percentage because I'm not sure about this movie." He took the $40,000 check instead. If he would have taken that, I think it was at one time the highest grossing comedy of all times. So it's interesting. Obviously, hindsight is always 20/20, but it's interesting some of these deals after the fact that you find out about, and you're just like, oh my God, why didn't you do that? But of course, in the moment at the time, you make a decision on the information that you have available and the chances you're willing to take at the time, and you have no idea how that's going to turn out. But it's funny to talk about when somebody.
Well, it's hilarious. This is something that I've mentioned to you many times, I think, in the past, because, not that I'm airing grievances, but I just found it ironic. So I did a 5-second spot in 2009 for this company called Zions. They were the official energy drink of the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
Literally a 5-second spot that has gotten played at every single fucking UFC event for the last 12 or 13 years. Okay. And I got $50 for that. I went into the studio in Vegas, a $50 spot, and I've done that. I did it one time, and it's played at every single UFC event for what I know up until this day. That's still
wow.
and I don't know if they're still a partner of the UFC. Science, official energy drink of the. It was classic. I did a great bit. 5 seconds, $50. I had no idea. They didn't offer me any sort of a residual, so it wasn't an opportunity that I turned down.
I still got a kick in the nuts. Yeah. I think it's like the guy that did the original You've Got Mail.
Yes.
He probably got paid $5 for that, and it's been heard 60 million times. And he's probably thinking, son of a bitch, why didn't I get residuals on that?
And this morning, if Rob Banks is watching us, who I believe, Chad, is a new Facebook group member of ours, Rob, our former producer from Las Vegas, would attest to, Rob, if you're a voiceover artist, you get kind of wrecked on that stuff. It doesn't matter how big of a celebrity you are, how many times that thing gets aired. You really don't get the compensation that you think that you would, unless maybe you're like John Goodman and you're doing a TV commercial.
Yeah.
Then maybe you get a certain above scale average. But
Sam
for the most part,
exactly.
Yeah. Fuck Sam Elliott and John Goodman, by the way. I love you both. I really do. But you're stealing all of our work. I mean, like, these are things that used to be reserved for really unattractive guys like myself and Chad, who in the background had good voices. You can't go be a movie star and take all our voice work, right? Like, you can't do that.
Foreman says that stuff that you promoted tastes like shit and steroids and urine, he says.
I think it is steroids and urine. I think that's actually what the official
secret recipe
of the UFC is. And also man sweat. So when you're thinking UFC, you're thinking hot holds, rear naked chokes. There's never been, oh God, I feel like I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. There's never been a gay bar that probably hasn't had a UFC event on the TV in the background.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
That's just hot male on male action right there, right?
Yeah.
I used to say this in front of somebody I didn't know was a mixed martial artist. Didn't go over well. Let me just say that. Did not go over well. But I'm just saying, like, dude, there's a lot of misplaced male aggression going on, right? Like, I mean, is this just me, or did you just want to jump into a ring with your friend, start sweating around, and put your face in their ball sack?
Before we get into this fight that we've been hyping up for the last 6 months, let me take my shirt off and put these little tidy whities on.
Yes.
So, yeah, no, it's completely heterosexual. You're absolutely correct.
A little misplaced male aggression. Just saying. Not calling out anybody specifically, Ben. I'm just making this as a point of reference. All right, stay tuned. We got a freewheeling show. By the way, speaking of freewheeling, take this morning's poll question. This was a freewheeling conversation at the recovery room yesterday. Matt, who's checking in from the recovery room, myself, Javon, Ethan, and even Jeremy P12 Foreman were asking this question aloud. Chad, I'll be curious to get your thoughts. Which of these two wide receivers is a first ballot Hall of Famer? Julio Jones or Antonio Brown? We'll give you some insight on why we talked about this when we come back here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studio. Stick around. What can I say? The Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi Street is not only my favorite bar in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, it's my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Breakfast served 8 to noon, Saturday and Sundays, daily specials, incredible cocktails, and the best damn wait staff in the entire city. My buddy Matt knows how to treat you right, and that's why when you go to the Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi, you're always going to have a great time and a great meal with a great cocktail. So if you haven't been in a while, or perhaps you're just a regular and you want to stop in again, make it a thing. I'm there every single week. How about you?
Do you have a wedding, anniversary party, or bat mitzvah coming up in your life? Then you need Hey Duda DJ services featuring Neil Duda, the Midwest Eminem.
No doubt about it, I'm been hammered, and that's every day. Brand so cloudy, dog.
Dropping sick beats while you enjoy your treats. No party is too big or too small. Quinceañeras, graduations, ice cream socials, or cockhold parties. Whatever the celebration, Hey Duda is rocking the foundation.
Here we go again. Back with all our friends. Here comes the pain.
Neil Duda.
Broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios, this is the Sports Carnival. Everything I like is either too expensive, illegal, or it won't text me back. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
So what if the things that I like are both too expensive and illegal, and they won't text me back because they're with somebody else?
You have a shotgun?
I do. Matter of fact, I got a few of those things. I was just thinking about our friends in Las Vegas. Shout out to all the escorts. Both too expensive and illegal, and also not texting us back in a timely manner. Shout out to you ladies of the night. I was talking to somebody yesterday, maybe day before, and they had a thought, and I don't know why it is that I'm thinking of this now, except for I mentioned escorts. They had a thought that their friend, who is now married to somebody in town, doesn't matter who it is, but this friend of theirs, they assume and are willing to say, on record, went to Las Vegas to be an escort, but didn't engage in any sort of sexual activity. Just went to dinner with these guys because that's what they're telling their husband now. Who fucking believes that shit? Like, if you're an escort, you're a whore. I mean, like, that's just what that is. Yeah. That's it. I mean, I don't mean to poo-poo on anybody's parade, but that's what that is.
You're escorting their penis into your vagina is what you're escorting.
Yes. And or your butthole, and or your mouth, or tits. I mean, like, there are a few things that you could be escorting them to.
Well, you didn't have to go that far.
Well, might as well.
I don't hear you anymore. What happened? You're on mute, buddy. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. Well, you know what we're going to do here. I'm not sure if anybody can hear us. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to break.
Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices.
At the Little Doobie's Pizza, we kill 2 stone birds with 1 rock every time with our hand-rolled Doobie Deluxe for only $49.95. That's a street value of over $75. No way! The Doobie Deluxe is a hand-rolled 18-inch pizza that will blow your bone-resonant mind. Whoa! Topped with a sausage, black olives, extra cheese, and about a half ounce of the finest kush at east side of San Bernardino.
Dude, give me another slice.
Because at Little Doobie's Pizza, we put a little TLC in our THC.
And right now, for a limited time only, get an order of crazy cannabis bread for only $10 with an order of a Doobie Deluxe at the street value of over $22.50.
You know what we say at the Little Doobie's Pizza? Why get stoned then eat when you can do both at the same time?
Doobies.
This is Tailgating Tales with Bert Kowalski.
Episode 22.
There'll be no toilet wine before it's time. It was late September of '92. The Bengals are in town and managed to take out Packers starting QB, the Magic Man, Dan Majkowski. Enter stage left, and then fresh-faced Brett Favre. Who engineers a beautiful fourth-quarter comeback to beat Cincy 24-23. It began a 15-year bromance with the state of Wisconsin and cheeseheads worldwide. Meanwhile, I'm in the Lambeau Field parking lot, where I've enjoyed every home game since I was knee-high to a Milwaukee's best tall boy. This is where the tale takes a twist. Majkowski's out, the pack is in jeopardy, and I'm out of beer. Lucky for me, Lou Three Fingers Nelson, who did a stretch in Joliet, always had a fresh batch of toilet wine brewing in his mini Winnie. I was 6 cups in and barely coherent when Favre threw that TD to Kendrick Taylor for the win. God bless Favre, and God bless Three Fingers Toilet Wine.
Favre put it right on the line. A perfect pass, a perfect catch.
Hi, I'm Irene, and I care about you. That's why I started Care Packages by Irene, or CPBI. At CPBI, we have a wide range of care packages, from I care about you but don't get too clingy, to I'm completely obsessed with you and you should probably get a restraining order, and everything in between. Because it's CPBI, if you care, we care.
Visit us online at carepackagesbyirene.org.
The Social Distancing Sport Association, or SDSA, presents guidelines to safer athletics. For example, when participating in basketball,
Remember the Harden rule.
that's right, James Harden is a man ahead of his time. Number 1, when playing defense,
That is, if you choose to.
keep 3 to 6 feet between you and your opponent. Never double team and always appear disengaged or aloof. On offense, be sure to isolate yourself from your teammates.
Dribble the shot clock down.
Rarely pass, and finally take a 30 to 35-foot shot. This has been brought to you by Arm's Length Under Armour. Go ahead and play. Just stay at least an arm's length away.
And we are back to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. And we believe that Dave Carney is back. Dave, are you back? Can we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes,
can
it's
you
like
hear me now?
a really bad Verizon commercial.
You know what? This is totally, I'm not going to blame just Mark Zuckerberg, but Jeff Bezos and all of those at Chat GPT, which is going to actually take over the world.
I hear.
These are things that are conspiring against us. Listen, I apologize for the miscommunication here. I don't know what happened exactly. It was an actual blip of the Matrix. Javon over at the recovery room yesterday was talking about Julio Jones, which we led into this whole situation. Also mentioned that ChatGPT gave him a B+ paper in his class at a university here in town that actually had to deal with Socrates. This was a 6-level course that had to deal with Socrates. ChatGPT, Chad, gave this dude an actual B+ paper. So I don't know who was coming for us from the interwebs, but somebody definitely was. As our Facebook user mentioned, Mark Zuckerberg did not like the butthole talk.
Yes,
that's
his
a real,
mouth looks like one. That's part of the reason why.
Indeed. And perhaps because, you know, he understands where it was that we were going with this. Pump the brakes on your outrage. We're just talking about escorts in Las Vegas. That's all it was. You don't have to be a whore to be an escort, but you have to be an escort to be a whore. That's all I'm saying. Those two things are diametrically intertwined. Okay, so we'll just leave that at that. If you are just tuning in right now, checking in, watching us, I am curious to get your thoughts on Julio Jones, Antonio Brown. I mentioned we got into kind of a rambunctious conversation about these two guys. Chad, I know it feels like an off-topic conversation, but Antonio Brown yesterday, and you're not a social media guy, so you wouldn't have seen this, posted this most ridiculous video on, I believe it was TikTok, in which he's attempting to rap and saying things like ooby dooby, scooby dooby, la la la. And he thinks this is cool. Shirt off, like there's some guy in the background dancing. He's at his couch. Chad, it feels insane. It's like if Jamarcus Russell took all of the cough syrup in the entire world and drank it at one time while playing Xbox, he would put together this kind of rap. Shaq on his worst day was never as bad as Antonio Brown. Kobe Bryant's record would have gone triple platinum before Antonio Brown. It was awful. I mean, just awful, scary bad. And it got us into the conversation about these wide receivers.
Yeah.
To me, it's like this. Julio Jones, a first ballot Hall of Famer, all the way because he leads, I believe still to this day, all NFL wide receivers in passing catches, I should say catching yards per game. Like he's above Jerry Rice and every other, Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald. He's above these other guys in catching yards per game over his career. That's 10 plus years. Antonio Brown had a really good window of a few years that were really good. I don't know if you can be a first ballot Hall of Famer if you weren't the best player at your position over, I don't want to say a generation, but at least an 8 to 10 year period. To me, that's the NFL's Hall of Fame window. Best player at your position, 8 to 10 year period, you're in first ballot right away. And I'm not saying AB is not a Hall of Famer. I just don't know that he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Julio Jones, in my estimation, guaranteed, lock it in, first ballot Hall of Famer.
I agree with that. I like Julio Jones for a first ballot. I think both of them are going to go in the Hall of Fame, and I would say that Antonio Brown may be a second or third ballot kind of guy. That would be my guess. But there's no shame in that. At the end of the day, once you get into the Hall of Fame, who really cares if it was the first, second, third, fourth, whatever ballot it was? You're there, right? The whole point is to be there amongst the greatest of all time, and that's really the tip of the cap from the whole league to you saying that you are one of the greatest. How you got there really doesn't matter. It's kind of like the score. Yeah, maybe in college it matters, but at the end of the day, all that matters is the win. So I agree with you on that. But I think that Julio Jones is close because I see Joey Miller saying neither one of them are first ballot Hall of Famers. So there are people that are probably going to disagree with that. But I have a tendency to lean towards you and say that it would be Julio Jones out of the two.
So it's interesting. Neither is getting 25% of the vote on our Twitter feed. Julio Jones getting the other 75%. Over on our Facebook group page, Tad, Julio Jones 57%, both 14, neither 14. And added by Neil Duda is Justin Jefferson, now with 14%. Jefferson,
a little early.
Little time to go. Little ways to go there for Justin Jefferson. And listen, Justin Jefferson, if he did retire today, would not be a Hall of Famer, right? He just wouldn't be. Andrew Luck, who was probably the best or one of the best quarterbacks for a period of 5 to 7 years, he will. I don't think he will be a Hall of Famer.
No.
Gale Sayers, there's no emotional movie about him that's, going to make a big screen debut. And Gale Sayers, by the way, was back in the day. Most of you kids don't know who that is. Really talented running back, played 7 years in the NFL, but he's still a Hall of Famer. His impact on the game was such that you can't tell the story of the NFL without Gale Sayers. You can tell the story of the NFL without Andrew Luck, and you can tell it without Antonio Brown. The thing about Julio Jones is this: when you look at the numbers, he will be always referenced in the greatest wide receivers because he caught more yards per game, at least on average, than anybody else ever has. That's still something that will stand up.
I think the other thing about Andrew Luck is, and I know this is kind of weird to think this way, but I think it's true. Part of the reason why he might not make it because he voluntarily left the game. With the Kansas Comet, otherwise known as Gale Sayers, he had to leave the game early because of a horrific knee injury that took him out, and he never was the same after that. But if you go watch film on the guy, he was the first Barry Sanders. He was the guy that you'd watch and just scratch your head and go, I don't know how that just happened. He was absolutely amazing and dominated his rookie season and a couple seasons after that. And then again, I think he blew his knee out against the San Francisco 49ers and was never quite the same. And then it's tied into the whole Brian song because of Brian Piccolo. But I want to bring this up because I find this interesting. I just started thinking about this. Joey Miller says Julio never won a ring. You know what's interesting about that is every other position other than quarterback, that is important. And in basketball, it's important at every position. When you think about it, you don't necessarily need a ring to get to that level. If you're a running back, a wide receiver, a defensive lineman, an offensive lineman, a cornerback, a safety, any other position, people don't really think about that. But if you're a quarterback, even if you've hoisted up all of these yards, but he didn't get a ring. It's really interesting to think about that. That shows you how much we think that the quarterback makes a difference in the game as opposed to every other player, which one can argue that's true, but maybe we overemphasize that a little too much.
We always overemphasize it. Quarterbacks get way more credit than they deserve and way more blame than they also deserve when it comes to the wins and the losses of the team. Yes. That's why playing quarterback in the NFL is and then this almost pains me to say because so many other sports have great stars at great positions. Quarterback in the NFL is the preeminent position in American professional sports. if you're the quarterback for an NFL team, it's one of the few jobs. There's one of, 32 now, but it didn't used to be that many. And if you lead a franchise, Dallas Cowboys, Green Bay Packers, whomever, to glory, you are entrenched and enshrined forever with that legacy and that particular team. No other position really does that. You need to be a special player. You look at Lawrence Taylor, Reggie White. Those are few exceptions of defensive players, Chad, that we look back at now and say, oh my God, they were absolutely the best player in the league. Forget position, forget offensive and defense. They were the best player in the position. Playing quarterback, there is something about that. And maybe this is just our, I don't know, narrative in America because of what we think about football. That position, you win a Super Bowl, you win an NFL championship, you are elevated. And I know it's not fair, but that's why these guys get so much more credit than they actually deserve and so much more blame than they deserve. I remember Jeff Garcia once telling me when I asked this little short motherfucker how he was able to see 50 yards downfield and put the ball on a dime. And he said, in between banging my really hot Playboy wife and making football plays, I just have to drop back and trust the process. It really was 5 or 6, 3, 5 yard, or 5 steps back. You have a timing and a rhythm and you just go. A lot of times interceptions, missed plays, they're not the quarterback's fault, but the quarterback gets charged with the interception. If a receiver drops the ball and it bounces into the hands of the defensive player, it's not the wide receiver like Calvin Johnson or Larry Fitzgerald that's credited with the interception. It's the quarterback. So there are certain metrics. I know it seems weird, but there are certain metrics that we put on quarterbacks, and that I think is why it's so important. But you're right. In basketball, every position's got to win a championship to be an A-team. Major League Baseball, it doesn't really matter. That's a stat game anyways. But in the NFL, everybody but quarterback gets a pass, including Calvin Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald.
Well, just think about our buddy that we can't go 5 minutes without talking about, Aaron Rodgers. Think about all of his hardware, all of the numbers he's put up. Put him in any other position with all of that. And granted, he did win a Super Bowl and an MVP. Or no, he didn't win the MVP in that, did he?
Yes, he was Super Bowl MVP. Unless it was
he won the Super Bowl and an MVP. So add that to it. But at any other position, we would be talking about the greatest football player, one of the greatest football players of all time. But because he's a quarterback, what do we say? Yeah, he's only won 1 Super Bowl. Okay. Well, tell that to Dan Marino. I'm sure he would love to talk to you about that. Yeah. He probably would tell you to fuck off. This is probably what he would say.
I would love to hear Dan Marino come on the show and tell us to fuck off. That would be actually really, really satisfying because I would have
to win championships by yourself in an 11-on-11 game. I mean, it's just kind of really, when we think about it, and I'm guilty of it too, it's really kind of ridiculous how we segregate this and then try to decide to talk about it and how all of these rules don't necessarily apply position by position, and it's all focused on quarterback. And if Matt is asking about the difference between Calvin Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald or who's better, in my opinion, I'm going Megatron over Larry Fitzgerald.
Absolutely. I mean, from a pure talent standpoint, I take Calvin Johnson. Like if we had these 4 wide receivers, so the 2 on our poll, Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, Matty, we were talking about that yesterday too. But if we were to take all of those guys, 4 of those guys, and say draft them right now, who would you take first? I'm taking all day, every day, twice on Friday, Calvin Johnson. Then I'm probably taking Julio Jones. Then I'm taking Larry Fitzgerald. I guess I'd have to take Antonio Brown after that because he was a pretty talented wide receiver, but more crucial and really kind of a weird dude. I don't care if you're super weird because Antonio Brown's little cousin, Marquise Brown, is playing in the NFL right now, and maybe he's a freak show too. I don't know, but he's a good football player and doesn't put his team on blast in the locker room. There are certain things about Brown that I just find so upsetting as a football fan. I would not want to take him if I knew what I knew going into it. But to the credit and the point that Matt's making here, both are Hall of Famers. He's talking Fitzgerald and Calvin Johnson without a ring. Yes, that's what Chad was saying. It doesn't matter if you're a wide receiver, if you're a running back. Barry Sanders, was there ever a consideration? What did he win? 3 playoff games in his career.
Exactly.
Was there a consideration that he would not be a Hall of Famer? No fucking
Of course not. No,
of course not.
And some people would argue, and I would be one of them, perhaps the greatest running back of all times. I mean, in my mind, it's him, Jim Brown. You got
to put OJ in there.
Walter Payton.
Put OJ in there.
I don't put OJ in there. I put Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Jim Brown. Those are my guys. Emmett Smith's way down on the list. But Barry Sanders is dominated, absolutely dominated, and he did things on the field that we never saw before. But from a team's perspective and teams winning percentages and playoff wins and all of that, it's absolutely horrible. So if you gauge, that's what my point. If you gauge how we gauge against quarterbacks to a guy like Barry Sanders, he wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, which would be a complete shame because he didn't win enough.
No, he didn't win enough. The Lions were so bad. And I think that, as Neil's saying, he saw Barry play once. Neil Duda, by the way, great shit on the show this morning. He saw him play, and he was literally poetry in motion. The running back, the wide receiver, the fullback, the tight end, none of those guys get the football without the quarterback giving them the football, right? So back to our original supposition, quarterbacks get way more blame than they deserve, also way more credit than they deserve. But Barry doesn't get the ball unless he gets it handed off to him, right? So there's something about that quarterback position that separates itself from all other positions because generally they're thought of as the point guard, the general on the field.
I mean, I get it. I just think we emphasize way too much.
Of course we do.
It's unfair.
Of course we do. It is. And I said this last week. If Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, is there news on Aaron Rodgers? Not from what we know. There's nothing bubbling up from what we know on Rodgers, except for the fact is he's still a douchebag and fuck Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, if he went to 5 NFC championship games, like Patrick Mahomes has gone to 5 AFC championship games.
Yeah.
We said this. We would probably feel a lot differently about his career. Because if you're always knocking on the door, right? Like just right up against that door, knocking right on it, you probably feel like that one Super Bowl isn't as, I wouldn't say it's a diminished, sort of an accomplishment because it's a Super Bowl, but you probably wouldn't look at it, Packer fans, with the same jaundiced eyes as a lot of Packer fans do now, saying, oh, they only won one, because the Packers haven't really been close. Even in the seasons in which they've been the number one seed, they just haven't felt close. And I think that's the knock against a guy like Rodgers, because again, the running back doesn't get the ball. Nobody gets the football unless he gives it to them. And when Aaron Rodgers shrinks in big spots, postseason games, okay, it stands out more. The running back, again, Aaron Jones, for example, for the Packers, sometimes I'm like, where the fuck is this guy? Oh, wait, Rodgers doesn't give him the football. Never mind. I understand. There's only so much to do. That's why Barry Sanders, Gale Sayers, these guys are, their impact is such that, and again, the game was different back then, but their impact is such that you see it and you say, oh, wow, yep, absolutely, Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, Neil Dew is bringing up something that I've brought up many times, which isn't fair either, because you clearly can't do this, but it's fun to speculate. If you put Barry Sanders, let's say if you would have put Barry Sanders, I always did this, on the Dallas Cowboys team, which Emmitt Smith obviously occupied at the time, and they always went back and forth on who was going to be the leading rusher. Imagine Barry Sanders behind that line with Troy Aikman and the weapons that they had. Yeah. Really, that's the other way to gauge a guy. Actually, and I think Barry gets more credit because it's like, look at what he was able to do in frickin' Detroit. I mean, that's actually even more impressive. He was on the Lions and was able to rack up 15,259 yards. Yes, I remember that. I don't know why, but it's stuck in my head.
And for Barry, the thing about that is, you're right. The Lions give him credit because they were so terrible that being that good for that bad of a team, it does stand out. It really does. In the NBA, that would not be the case. And I mention this guy's name often because I liked him as a college player at Illinois. I liked him as an NBA player. Kendall Gill. You remember Kendall Gill?
Yeah, I played for the Sonics. Loved Kendall Gill.
He did. Very good player. He averaged 20-some points, 6 rebounds for the Hornets. Guess what? Nobody cares because you're putting up stats on a garbage team. It doesn't matter. You could have Hall of Fame stats. It doesn't matter. In football, it is different. And I guess I go back to what you just mentioned, Barry Sanders on the Dallas Cowboys. Troy Aikman might not be a Hall of Famer if Barry Sanders was on that team, because I don't know. And Troy Aikman threw a limited number of attempts comparative to nowadays, but he was still an awesome quarterback. Like, dude, Troy Aikman was great. For those people that didn't see him, Troy Aikman was exactly what you would think that a number one pick is. He was fantastic. But if Barry played for them as opposed to Emmitt Smith, I don't know that Troy Aikman would have ever thrown to Michael Irvin. Why would you? Because you had this offensive line that was a Hall of Fame offensive line. Barry Sanders was such a game wrecker that 15,000 plus 10 more if he played with Dallas, 25,000 yards. It wouldn't be close. It just wouldn't even be close. Now, to that end, I'm curious to get your thought on this. Is Frank Gore just a guy that played too many years? Because Frank Gore is a guy that racked up, what is he, number 2, 3? I think he's number 2 all time in rushing yards.
Well,
Frank Gore's a fine player, but he's a lot more Emmitt Smith than he is Barry Sanders.
He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I do think he is a Hall of Famer at some point. He's one of those guys that's going to be later on down the list just because you have to respect his longevity. I mean, to have that kind of longevity as a running back, when you think about the punishment that running backs take and the kind of style that he ran, it's impressive. But yeah, when you look at yards per attempt and, and all of those kinds of things, obviously it's not quite as impressive as other guys are. But still, I think, longevity does factor in when you're talking about GOATs, right? In my opinion, when you're talking about Hall of Fame, it should, because especially in a violent sport like football, if you're able to go past 10 years even, it's impressive. But if you reach the 15 to 20 year mark, like that there again, it's been 5 minutes. We haven't talked about Tom Brady. When you think about his career, 23 seasons at quarterback, and as many shots as he's taken and all those things, and you couple that all together with his accomplishments, it really is, and I mentioned this yesterday on yesterday's show, and I brought it up at work. You really start to have to ask, who's the GOAT of GOATs? And he very well could be the GOAT of GOATs. Now, my buddy at work said he said it's recency bias or era bias. He would say Michael Jordan, because when he grew up, it was Michael Jordan dominated. And you can't disagree with, obviously it's very subjective and everybody's opinion counts here, but I think Tom Brady could be at the top of that list. I think you could make an argument for that and would be hard to argue against.
I don't disagree with that. As a matter of fact, I think that at this point, now that we're officially calling Tom Brady's career a career, I didn't believe that he was retiring last year because he hedged around that so much, right? I'm going to retire for the most part. I'm going to stay home with my wife and my kids for the most part.
Right.
That didn't feel real. This year, this is over. There is no going back on this one because there's nothing left to play for. The guy threw 4,600 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 picks last year, third in the NFL in yards, the touchdowns. None of that matters. Like, he's not close to being a Super Bowl champion again, and that's it. But there is something about longevity that does, as you've mentioned, weigh into that factor. I think that's what Larry Fitzgerald gets benefited by, and a guy like Frank Gore gets benefited by. Not that Larry wasn't a great wide receiver, but essentially he played so many years that his numbers started to creep up with the greatest of all times, even though he didn't have necessarily that kind of impact on a game in, game out, or a season in, season out basis. The GOAT of GOATs, though, Tom Brady, I used to think it was Wayne Gretzky, greatest professional North American sports.
I wouldn't have disagreed back then either. Yeah.
But now I'm with you. I think that Tom Brady is that guy. And look, for Michael Jordan fans, I was right there with you guys. I had Charles Barkley's number 14 Dream Team jersey when I was 12. 12, again, not over 18. Then you're a weirdo. If you're 12, it's okay because you're a kid. You're playing dressing, make-believe. But I loved Michael Jordan during the day. I hated him as a fan of the Lakers, but I loved him. But realistically, Michael Jordan's, dominance, if we want to say dominance, lasted over an 8-year period. Like, he was a great player in his early career, right? Guess who he lost to? Everybody. The Celtics, the Pistons, the Lakers, the Suns, the Bucks, everybody Michael Jordan lost to. I know it seems crazy, but I had started to think, and we talked about this briefly once before, we're going long. I had started to think about Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan's career. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but who is the greater player? Michael Jordan's better than Scottie Pippen by far, right? Like, he's a better talent. Michael couldn't win at all, couldn't win fucking games, couldn't go to the playoffs without Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen had plenty of success without Michael Jordan. He really did. The Blazers, the Rockets, even when he was a dogged old man going back to the Bulls, there was still something there. I know it sounds crazy because Jordan's better, but greater, I think, is often weighed incorrectly because we look at the one and not the sum of the total and think about how that one player in particular impacted that. No doubt Michael Jordan, talent-wise, is one of the greatest of all time. But as LeBron, gets closer and closer, by the way, big win for the Lakers last night.
63 points away now.
63 points away from passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. If you still ask me today, who would I take? Number one, Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, Kareem. Well, I'm taking Kareem, dude. The guy was the most well-constructed basketball player of all time. He did win 3 national championships in a row at UCLA. He lost 1 game in college. He didn't lose a game in high school. He won 6 MVPs. He was the all-time scoring leader. Fucking Defensive Player of the Year awards weren't even there when he came into the league. He would have had every record, blocks, Defensive Player of the Year. The things that Kareem did, again, recency bias be damned, are things that you could plug and play in today's game and have more success maybe than even before. like more success than even before. So with Brady, though, his longevity, it does weigh in there, and his accomplishments are unbelievable.
Neil Duda brings up something I've brought up before. Whose career would you rather have? Would you rather be Charles Barkley with no rings and all of the fame, and it's Charles Barkley and be considered one of the greatest, or Robert Horry with 7 rings? That really determines if when people say, well, I just want to win championships. Oh, well, really?
Right.
Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to be that guy? You willing to be a role player, but to be in the right position at the right time and make the right shots, big shot Bob, and have 7 rings? I personally would rather be Robert Horry. Not to mention you look like Will Smith. So, I mean, it's a win-win. You look like a movie star. You got 7 rings. You're making NBA money. Who cares if you're a Hall of Famer or if you're considered one of the greatest? You got 7 rings, man.
But, okay, let's spin this off into their post-playing career. If you're a great player like Barkley with that personality, your money-making opportunities after the game are so much more than your opportunities if you're Robert Horry. I get what you're saying, though. And Robert Horry, 7 rings.
He could fill in for Will Smith during, like, big movies. That you could make.
He really could. Actually, you know what? I wouldn't want to be slapped by Robert Horry. Like, that shit would really hurt. Like, Will Smith can take a shot at me any day.
Hit my fucking wife's mouth or name out of your fucking mouth.
Yeah, if Robert Horry hits you, you might be Rudy Tomjanovich. Okay, little Rocket connection there. But you're right. 2 with the Rockets, 3 with the Lakers, 2 with the Spurs. Great career. Great career. All right, guys, let's take a quick pause because my microphone is working. Everything is good. When we come back here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios, powered by the Recovery Room. Chat, we got to take a little visit back to last night's Bucks game. The Bucks played the Clippers. Really close game. Giannis Antetokounmpo has now joined my man Kareem Abdul-Jabbar once again.
What?
In all-time history for the Milwaukee Bucks. Stick around. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate.
Hello, this is Professor Fission for Nuke and Nuke Light, the world's first nuclear beer. Brewed and nuked in 1956 and recently found in Warehouse 14. How's it still fresh, you may ask? Well, thanks to our friends at Cesium-137, Stromium-90, and Plutonium-239, these beers will stay fresh for another 90 years. Not only does Nuke and Nuke Light have 10 times the kick, but you're sure to be a hit at the party because it helps your urine glow in the dark.
Nuke and Nuke Light. Pick up a case today before it melts through your grocer's floor. Handle with care. Yummy.
The Sports Carnival broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Remember, some people are street smart. Others are Sesame Street smart. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Yeah, baby. By the way, don't fuck with Big Bird or the Oscar the Grouch, man. They're both carrying shanks. That is something. Under Big Bird's like feathers, there was a 6-inch blade. And by the way, Oscar the Grouch had a Mac 10. Can you believe that? Back in the day, I mean, he was reckoned with Tech 9s early, but he went to a Mac 10 when he got to be about 30. You can't fuck with Sesame Street, man. That was the hard streets of New York. Don't fake the funk on a Sesame Street dunk. Chad, this is something else I wanted to mention here. Nuke Light. We played that commercial for Nuke Light. That's real. Somebody mentioned in town that recently they had glowing urine, got somebody sick from having glowing urine. They had sexual intercourse and they came to the bar and said, I got somebody sick. I feel terrible. My glowing urine apparently made them sick. And I said, no, that's plutonium-239 from Nuke Light. It's fine. It's going to go away. It'll wash out of your system in 50 to 100 years. No problem. It's going to just pass over.
Drink some carrot juice. You'll be fine.
That's good. And also, if you've got any like extra creatine to put into your protein shake, do that too. It somehow it diffuses a bit of the chemical compound in that Nuke Light. Very good beer, by the way. And speaking of good beers, do you know what we got back into the Recovery Room's cooler case yesterday? It's not on tap, but back in the Recovery Room cooler case, Red Stripe Labatt Blue. If you're a hockey fan, if you're a Canadian fan, And also the banquet beer, Coors Banquet Beer, the full banquet beer. It's interesting. These things come around, not that they're not around all the time, but they come into bars sort of seasonally. Like Nuke Light is basically a summer drink for the most part. You do it in the wintertime on occasion, but it's mainly a summer beer. Red Stripe, Labatt Blue, and Coors Banquet Beer now on for you at the Recovery Room. It's a taste sensation.
I am a Coors Light fan. I do not want to be invited to any Coors Banquet. I think that banquet is horrible. That is the worst beer. I remember the first time I had Coors Banquet beer, I was like, this is absolute garbage. But I am a huge fan of Coors Light because I like to drink lots of beers and piss 3 times a minute. So if those are the things that you're looking for, then Coors Light will fit the bill.
It's good hydration, mostly water with a touch of beer.
Rocky Mountain Gatorade. Yeah.
Rocky Mountain Gatorade on Wednesdays, Chad, Wing Wednesday at the Recovery Room. Boosh Trauma Center Studio, powered by the Recovery Room. $14, a pound of wings, and a 32-ounce pitcher of Coors Light.
For a pound of wings and a
32-ounce pitcher of Coors Light, $14 on Wednesday.
I'm there.
Wednesdays.
I'm there.
I'm telling you, get there. Brad from Green Bay is checking in here. I love that you put this up on the screen for us, Chad. Red Stripe, Jamaica's best. I had a couple Red Stripes last night. Yes, I did.
I haven't had one of those forever. In fact, I forgot they even existed.
They're tasty. It's an import beer. Some people get a little put off by the fact that it's a $5 beer. Red Stripe's an import beer. You got to remember, not a lot of shit comes into this country from Jamaica. Like, they have 2 imports. That's one of them. Reggae music's the other. That's easier to send through MP3 files. Red Stripe weighs more. I didn't necessarily make everybody happy by going downstairs and having Red Stripes last night, but I did it anyways because it just felt like the thing to do. You ever do that where you know that your actions are going to infuriate or at least slightly madden somebody, but the pull of the thing, whatever that is, in this case, Red Stripe, was too great. You couldn't give it up.
Neil Dude is saying something. I'm sorry. I got distracted.
That's okay.
You guys haven't seen the Bert and Ernie and MOP Anti-Up mashup video on YouTube.
No.
Check it out. You won't regret it. I don't know what that is. The MOP Anti. I'm not sure what that means.
I don't know either. I'm Master of Puppets. I'm wondering if that's what it means. Is it Master of Puppets? I'll check it. I'm going to use actually the words that you have put up here, copy and paste them into YouTube and check this out. I thought that the Dave Chappelle special where they had Snoop Dogg doing the voiceovers during a reenaction or recreation of what Sesame Street is, where they had guys on drugs, man. And it was, they had guys there. That was fucking hilarious. It really was hilarious. They had dudes with VD and all sorts of stuff. It was really good. I'll check that out, though, Neil. And thank you for being a student of the game and also somebody that keeps their nose to the ground of popular culture. Let me see what Rob Dog's got to say. Oh, this is something that we do want to mention. I saw Rob Dog mention something about the loggers. Okay. Thomas from UWL was checking in this morning. Let me throw this on screen. Says, good morning. He's got some really great news. He's going to be an intern with the loggers this summer, running camera for all 36 home games, itching for some of those beautiful summer days. Dude, now more than ever, we are itching for beautiful summer days. It's minus 11, the temperature. The real feel is like minus 30 today. Like minus 30. This is unconscionably cold. So, Thomas, stoked for you. Summertime can't come soon enough for us. And the folks at the Loggers, they love Thomas. I took Thomas to a Loggers game last year, Chad. Had him out there with some buddies of ours, Jimmy the Haggerty, Jimmy the Namath. What a great time Thomas had, and what a great kid. So, Thomas, I'm extremely excited for you. Congratulations. I don't know where Foreman's going with this money over pussy. Oh, that's what that MOP means.
Okay.
Maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's exactly what it means.
Okay.
Thanks, Foreman, for putting that. That's great. We love that. If for the uninitiated, is a lacrosse logger a baseball player, or is it something to do with logging games, like where they do the saws and whatnot?
That's fun that you should mention that, because there is one of those competitions on the Black River. Okay, so that does exist, and it's quite popular. No, the lacrosse loggers play in what they call the Northwoods League. So there are a couple of wood bat summer leagues that college players, there's only a couple in the country, that college players, I mean, the top star college players go to play in. So essentially what we get with the loggers is some of the best college baseball players in the country go to wood bat leagues in the summertime, not paid. This is, not even considered minor league. They're still college athletes. they play the wood bat league so they can get professional scouts to look at them and see what they would look like facing competition with real wood bats. I have no idea why college baseball plays with metal bats. I have no idea.
I still don't get that, why they have not switched that.
I have no idea why they do that. Bryce Harper, by the way, and this is one of the reasons why Bryce Harper could be considered a GOAT in Major League Baseball. Yes, Chris Sale pitched for the Loggers. Bryce Harper left high school early at 16. Left high school early at 16. Goes to play for CSN, the College of Southern Nevada, because they play in a JUCO wood bat league. Wrecks that league, 40 home runs in his freshman year. Becomes the number 1 pick. But there is something about playing in a wood bat league that until you get that experience, Major League scouts don't look at you the same. That's why I don't understand why we do so many different things in college than we would in the professional ranks, because say what you will about college basketball, college football, college baseball. If your job or your prospective job, and you're going to college to get jobs, right? That's why we say we're going to college, to get jobs. If you're going to get a job in chemistry, why would you be using non-standard chemistry sets? You wouldn't. You would use the ones that you'll use in a professional field, right? You're not going to use fake lab equipment. You're going to use real lab equipment. Why would you have a 30-second, or that's what I think we're in college now, shot clock? And why would you use metal bats in college baseball? If your professional goals are to play in that sport, just do what the pros do.
It's twofold. Not only that, you would think that you would want to acclimate yourself closer to getting into the profession, knowing that you're going to go into a league that uses a wood bat. And maybe more importantly, it's safer. We know this, right? Metal bats are dangerous. Are they not? I mean, how fast they come off of those bats. And I know they've done the research on this and how people have gotten injured, or I think even guys have gotten killed from that. You would think that this is a no-brainer, that this would be an automatic. And you would think that the players themselves would be clamoring for it, knowing that they're trying to highlight themselves to get into, you know, the next level, or to go into professional baseball. To me, this is a no-brainer. Maybe part of the reason why is because one of the things that baseball has really done well is their farm system. And a lot of guys just skip going to college altogether, get into the farm system and work their way up that way. And maybe now that I'm talking this out, that probably is the reason why. But still, you would think that the NCAA, somebody would be pushing for that.
Well, you would think, and I agree, the farm system is the way that Major League Baseball really, develops their talent. But I just go back to this notion, and we like to fool ourselves in many respects because we look at sports as some hallowed ground of purity. That's a joke. You're lying to yourself if you think that. Sports are nothing more than entertainment, and the players involved aren't necessarily a part of, like, Chad, you and I have been talking about this narrative and script writing. The players might be unwitting participants in that particular script writing because they go out and do their thing 100% all the time. But I just don't understand why in college sports, specifically basketball and baseball, football's pretty much like the NFL in a lot of respects. And now you're starting to see the NFL take over college schemes. I just don't understand why the game is so different. I really can't figure that part out because it doesn't translate the same. And if your idea is we're preparing these men or women for what they will do in a professional career, you go to law school, are you going to be talking about Sesame Street law, or are you going to be talking about cases that have been tried in real courts? Okay. You're going to talk about real courts. As much as I like Law-Abiding Citizen with, Jamie Foxx, that movie was ridiculous in its premise. None of those things would have happened ever. You can't watch Law-Abiding Citizen and say, well, this combined with Murphy Brown has given me a real good foothold on the American legal system. If you do that, you're going to be a really bad attorney. Why then would you play with different equipment, or in the college basketball's, version of this thing, with a different shot clock? Just play with the same shot clock, for Christ's sakes. It's 24 seconds. They've gone from 35 to 30. Cool. This is not a thing anymore. Play with the same shot clock that the NBA does. If you have any designs on making these players pros, it's just never washed on me well.
I heard the big case in Sesame Street law currently is the debate that the Swedish chef wouldn't bake a cake for Bert and Ernie's wedding, and there's a lawsuit involved in it. So, I mean, it does get serious. They do dig deep. So, I mean, I know you're saying that kind of glibly about Sesame Street law, but it gets real, man. I mean, this is real life.
Let me just throw this out here because I know Giannis had a great game last night, 54 points and 18 rebounds, and the Bucks beat the Clippers 106-105. Kawhi Leonard missed a game-winning shot at the end. All right.
Joker, by the way, had another triple-double.
Okay. So, and we'll talk more about the NBA when football's over. Okay, so I can guarantee you that NBA talk comes up when football doesn't actually dominate our lives. But I have thought about how wild it is when you think about every single character now. And I don't know why kids would need to know this. I really don't know why a 5-year-old needs to know the sexual orientation of a puppet. I just don't understand what that has to do with the price of tea in China. I just don't get that part. Like, everything I see now from these characters is assigning them. Comic books are the best at this. We've all known, and nobody needs to say, that a grown man wearing pajamas, tight underpants, siring a 13-year-old boy, we all know he's a pedophile. Batman's a fucking pedophile. We get it. He's a rich man that has a young boy living with him in an underground basement. That's called kidnapping for the most part, right? Like, that is a crime.
Yes.
We understand.
They live in a cave, for Christ's sake.
They live in a cave, for Christ's sakes. This guy's got plenty of money. He could put this boy up in a very nice spot. No, he makes him go and put him. Listen, he puts his life on the line. That's also child abuse. Like, Robin is put into dangerous, life-threatening situations at all time, and he's forced to wear that getup, which you couldn't even put on TikTok.
Well,
I mean, you get shut down. Why do we need to know who's gay and who's not? Like, if Ernie's gay, I don't care. I just don't
think
care.
Think about all superhero characters. Think about Spider-Man, a young man dresses up in his pajamas and shoots his web everywhere. I mean, it's all very perverse when you really start to peel back the layers. It's all very perverse and very perverted, and obviously there's an agenda behind it. But the fact that the Swedish chef won't bake the cake really bothers me. And
it bothers me too, Chad. I really will say it. It's one of those things I can't be sure I'll go to sleep at night over, knowing the Swedish cake baker won't make these two guys.
Hey, Bert, what's going on with the cake?
Nothing much, man. Just let's get back in the tub. Neil says they're just buddies who live together, roommates, well into their 30s. No big deal. Yeah. So when Walter
with
Matthau
window gardens,
yes, when the original Odd Couple came out, it made all the sense in the world. Why? Because it was the swinging time of the 1970s, right? It was two bachelors who, by the way, everybody looked so much older then than they do now, right? Like, I'm 42, 43, you're 46, 47. You don't look like you're a fucking day over 35.
I'm going to be 49 here in 20 days. So.
Oh, God.
Or 19 days now, actually.
Okay. Well, you don't look 49. And I guess my point is, like, Matthau and Lemon looked like they were 60 back in those days, right? They were probably in their late 30s or early 40s, but they were swinging, man. They were going out on the town trying to score chicks. It was a funny show. Three's Company, the same thing, different dynamic, of course, because it wasn't two guys. But yeah, these cartoons and the cuddle buddies at Sesame Street, we know what they are. It's fine. I guess what I'm saying is, why do we need to talk about, especially if you're a kid, and this is where I see where parents get a little upset with school shit now. Why do we need to talk about certain things at certain ages? Like, when your brain is not ready to comprehend the difference in, pansexual to Ernie sexual, what's the reason for explaining that? Right? Like, they don't know where Nebraska is on a map. And I mean, they can't tell you anything. They know nothing.
I think kids are pretty smart. They realize that all puppets are gay. They all have a hand up their ass. Think about it. They all have a hand up their ass. Of course they're gay. We know this. I mean, do we really have to talk about it? Let's just move on and learn our ABCs.
Well, I've learned over the years, Chad, I might like a finger up my ass every once in a while. It doesn't mean I'm gay. That's not a thing that necessarily means I'm gay. So I don't know if I go with you on that. All puppets are gay. I just wonder why we need the explanation. Like we talked about with the UFC and MMA. We understand just by virtue of the nature of the rear naked choke that there's a lot of misplaced male aggression. And boxing, the same thing too.
Very homoerotic, yes.
A little bit. And, same, no disparagement to our friends at the Navy, but you have 300 guys go down and 150 couples come back up.
Right. I mean, that's why they drink saltpeter in the Navy, just to make sure they get better. Hey, real quick, Neil Dude is asking, yes, February 22nd. He says it's the same birthday as his mom and George Washington's birthday. Also, Dr. J. Dr. J is also born on February 22nd. Yes.
No shit.
Yeah. So I share it with Drew Barrymore. There's a couple. Kyle McLaughlin. I can keep going down the list.
Who do you think represents you the best?
Chopin as well. What was that?
Who do you think represents you the best? Like if you had a birthday doppelganger, who are you going
with? Clearly Dr. J. I mean, everybody says it. When I'm out on the basketball, when I'm out, playing basketball on the 7-foot hoop and I'm just gliding, they're like, ooh, Dr. J, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. J is one of those dudes. Like I met him at Coaches for Cancer or Coaches Against Cancer years ago. Lon Kruger was actually, I can't remember. Coaches
They're
Against Cancer.
it or for it. We don't know.
Whatever. There was a fundraiser, right? Nothing's been done because we all know the cure is not where the money is. It's in the comeback. So there never will be a cure. But when I met Dr. J at the coach's I don't know, whatever it was, it impressed me because some of these guys you see on TV, you read their stat lines and you meet them in person if you're lucky enough, and they don't resemble really what that know, stat. Dr. J was every bit 6'7" as he was in his prime.
Yeah.
He was as tall, as athletic, as gracious as he could be.
Massive hands, too.
Oh, my God. I mean, went up to my forearm. Came up to this part. Jay was like in this part of my arm. It was wild. Great basketball player. Glad you guys share that birthday. That'll be fun.
Yes.
We're out of time. P12 Foreman, he shares a birthday with Jose Canseco. Maybe that's why you're taking ketamine. I'm just saying. I don't know.
That's where you got it from.
I won't tell on you. It's fine. This is just a little private conversation with us and a couple hundred of our closest friends. Have a great weekend, guys and gals. Don't watch the Pro Bowl. Nobody will. Take the Pro Bowl. Take this morning's poll question on our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney, our Facebook group page. Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, which is a Hall of Famer? Both, neither, or just one of the two. Julio Jones right now is leading our poll on Twitter, and neither is getting about the same amount of votes. So take this morning's poll question at the Sports Carney. Have a great weekend, Chad. Awesome stuff as always. We'll see you soon next Monday.